Hey friends, welcome back to Artists of the Way. I'm John, the host. Today we're resuming our conversation between myself, Nate Knobloch, and Jordan about our experiences playing Jesus. So we continue to unpack some of the impact that had on ourselves and unpack a little bit of what those two are doing in Godspell, their character dynamics, and just what their experience has been working on the show. Thanks for joining us. Should I tell stories?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah.
You got a story.
I do have a story. I have a couple stories. Matthew narrates the whole thing, and he was sick our first weekend and could not sing, and he had most of the solos, which was crazy. For me, I was 17, and I said when I was doing it, somebody asked me what the experience had been like, and I was like, I don't know. I think I'm too young to grasp what I've just done, and I think that in years to come, I'm going to look back and be like, wow, that was really profound. And that is definitely true, because I had a sense that I was doing the most important acting thing that I would ever do, but I also was like 17 and I'm doing a musical, you know?
Yeah, right.
But so a lot of my experience, I think, was just seeing the presence of God in it. One of my prayers early on, because I was not sure about accepting it, because I was young and was in a mad place spiritually. Like, I was connected to God, but I was like, I'm not like living the best life. So I took a day to pray about it, and I was like, Lord, I just felt peace about it, which is usually my okay. And I was like, Lord, I would love if you just basically puppeted me, because I cannot do this. I'm not a good enough actor to do this. I'm not a good enough singer to sing this music. I'm not. I can't do this myself. So it would be great if your Holy Spirit just basically puppeted me. And I legitimately think sometimes that happened. Not like puppeted me, but in the sense of for every Christian, the Holy Spirit works through them. I think he was faithful in that. So he was so present. So our lead was sick, couldn't sing most of his solos. But our lead was also we were asking him, do you need somebody to cover your songs? And he was like, I'm just going to try and we'll just see what I can sing. And we were like, okay. And his voice was literally like this. And we were like, okay. And so we would get to a song and he would start a song and not be able to sing it. But the cast somebody would jump in, and we never had two people jump in at the same time. Wow. It's the smoothest I've ever seen anything ever covered, because nobody talked about who was going to do what beforehand. Wow. The entire cast would just recognize, he can't do this, something else needs to happen for the show to keep going, and somebody would do it. And I think maybe one time, I think we had somebody start something at the same time. But that was it. It looked like that was how the show was supposed to be. Wow. It was like craziness. And then everybody was just dying of sickness. So that was rough too. There were nights where I got to the other end of the show, because we had a stomach flu, and then our first weekend and our last weekend we had a horrible cold. For a week and a half in shows, we had either a stomach flu or a horrible cold that just knocked us all down. So there were nights I got to the end and I was like, I don't know what I just did or how I did that. I felt like I blacked out. And then the show
seriously,
happened.
sometimes that happens. I don't know if it's just, because I've heard that it happens with just normal theater things, but sometimes that definitely happens playing Jesus. You're just like, I don't know how I did it. And then sometimes that's the show where everybody's like, oh my goodness, that was great. And you're like, wasn't me.
Yep.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yep. That was true. I think my coolest moments of realizing the heart of God, there were some cool moments with fellow cast members, just loving them, and some of the things I talked about with the triumphal entry and looking ahead and things like that. And just seeing people and be like, I created them, I love them. I did realize all my reactions were wrong very early on, because I was just I'm just going to have natural reactions. And man, the disciples are idiots and really annoying. And they do, especially in Gotten Beds, they do a lot of annoying things. Yeah. And they would do an annoying thing and I would get annoyed, and I was like, hang on a second. I do a lot of annoying things, and Jesus never says he's annoyed with me. So
Right.
I very early on, I was like, I need to have the opposite reaction that I'm naturally having. So I'd have my reaction, and I'd be like, nope, it's actually this.
Yeah.
But it was weird, because I was
I've
like,
experienced that too.
every human reaction I have needs to be thrown out the window. So, because there is one song called "We Gotta Get Organized," and Peter comes up to Jesus and is like, all right, so we got a plan. We're going to get you on TV. We've got somebody who's going to organize your political campaign. We're going to get you elected. It's going to be amazing, and we're going to sing a song about it. And then they sing this whole song about all the things and the PR things that Jesus needs to do. And I'm just sitting there like, we're literally about to go to Jerusalem for me to do the thing that I have to do. And my John reaction is just like, shut up.
Yeah.
But I'm like, Jesus also probably does not enjoy that they're missing the point, but it's not shut up. It's more like, I really wish that they understood.
Yeah.
I'm going to just bear with them, let them get through this.
Yeah.
And try and get the idea across. And that's a very different reaction.
Yeah. I had moments like that too, where you're just like, because like even just reading the scriptures, you're just like, these guys, how do they not get it? They were there with him.
He's like, I'm about to die, and they're like, but can we sit at your right and left hand though when you're ruling?
So you're just like, the human part of you is just like, you're missing it. But then like playing Jesus, you're just like, I had to like find in those moments. It's kind of like when you see a kid being dumb, and you kind of find it adorable.
Yep.
So like they come in and they like, they have like a good heart, but they're not doing it right, and like that was my go-to kind of as Jesus when they're like, I'm gonna do this thing. It's just like when my Peter would come up, he'd be like, even though they will all turn away, I will not turn away, and I'm just like, you will deny me 3 times. Like that's kind of the energy. Like it didn't go fully that. It was like there was still some sadness in it, but it was kind of a little bit of that, like, oh, buddy.
That's cute, yeah.
But like
the little kid that's like, I'm
back,
never
okay.
gonna get married, and
and you're like,
like 8 or 9 times out of 10, you're like, you probably will.
Come on.
Yeah.
Did you guys have trouble at all portraying like the angry, righteously indignant side of Jesus?
I didn't, because I love being angry on stage. So when I got to the I loved the overturning the money changer scene, because I just trashed the stage and I was like, you know what, I'm having fun with this. I did have a hard time. The 2 I had a hard time with was Get Behind Me, Satan, because that was just so harsh at Peter. And now I get it more as an adult. But as a teenager, I was like, that's just such a sharp reaction. So I had a bit of a hard time motivating that. And I always struggled with, our production put in something I don't know that I've ever seen any other adaptation do, which is when his family comes to visit him.
Oh, yeah.
And they say your mother and your brother are here. And it's after they've been thinking that Jesus is probably a little bit crazy. And he says, who is my mother and my brother? These are my mother and my brothers. That was really hard for me.
Yeah.
That was a hard line. So that was probably the harder one for me, is just that like radically different view of family and community that Jesus had.
Yeah.
But I really enjoyed getting it.
Because I feel like we associate anger so often so much with sin. And so like, how do we do that in a non-sinful way then? Yeah.
I think it was always very under control for me. Like I didn't...
Yeah.
I was playing Mr. Banks at the same time. So they have 2 very particular outburst moments, Jesus and Mr. Banks. And Mr. Banks, he becomes a bull in a china shop and destroys his family. But Jesus, I felt like it was all very focused and channeled on this is the evil. And so it was like the one that like loud, boisterous, like drunk, angry vibe versus when you see someone get really angry and they just get completely still and quiet and you're like, oh, snap. But it was like that, and I grabbed a sledgehammer and I don't think I did anything with the sledgehammer, and I just went and I just did the things and pushed people out, and then I did a slight brush of the nose. So it was all like very channeled, because I don't think he would let it run away and control him.
Right. And there's like love behind it too, because like, you people are hurting people I love so much, and I love you, and you're not getting it, and you're really dishonoring my Father
Yeah.
who deserves all honor and glory.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was one night we almost missed that because our Matthew skipped over it initially. So I went over and grabbed the sledgehammer and picked it up, and then he skipped to the after it, and then I put it down and walked back, and then he circled back, and I went back and picked up the sledgehammer.
All right, we're doing this. Okay, we're doing this.
We're gonna. Okay. Yeah.
What about for you, Jordan?
I didn't really. I was gonna say I don't think I necessarily got
You're
a
after
Right,
that
because
part.
it was the passion. Yeah.
But even, I feel like that's always the moment that we look at when we're like, see, Jesus got angry. But I feel like there were more moments, like because like you were saying with the get behind me, Satan, or just like that stuff. So, and I think the one moment I can think of is when, during the arrest of Jesus, I had this one moment where I necessarily didn't get angry. But I took authority because I was like, it's the part where I'm like, whom do you seek? And they're like, Jesus. And I'd say, I am he. And they'd all fall down. And so in that moment, like I always just took a stronger stance. I was like, it was like asking like the Jesus that I had been, whom do you seek? I am he was just so much of a stronger, like I lowered my voice. I just, I did it kind of like when I use like the dad voice, you know, I was like, I am he, like, just really projected. And I think that's as much as I was able to do with the thing that I had, because just the section of Jesus's life that I was dealing with, even the people that we would normally be like, oh, he should have been angry at that. Like, it was just, again, just so much compassion. Like, the way the one friend I had to look at with compassion a lot because he played Judas and Pilate and like all these other characters, and just every moment that it was like my instinct to be angry as a person of like, why are you doing this? I just had to like find the love and compassion in that of like, Pilate saying, like, my friend always commented, every time he'd say, what is truth? The look that I would give to him. Because originally I just like looked away or something. And then I changed it to a look at him. And he's like, that look you do just reads like so much heartbreak in that moment. And he's like, I can tell what you're doing. Like, I can feel like, I'm not saying anything, but he could feel, what is truth? Oh, you poor man. Like, just... like, and he's like, I can see the heartbreak in your eyes in that moment, and I'm like, that's cool, good, because that's what I'm trying to do. But so I didn't really get a chance to fully play into the righteous indignation of Jesus, but kind of had my moments of like authority.
Even that authority and confidence part is like a little difficult to me. Something I want to get better at in our rehearsal process, because I know at least me and probably like most people have like, a part of them who doesn't in normal circumstances think that people completely respect them or want to hear what they have to say. And so can maybe put on a little bit of like, like trepidation or fear in how they talk or even how they hold their body. Like, I think I like need to get better at standing up straighter.
Yes, you don't know. Let me give direction. Well, you've done that, though. We had a moment, there's this wonderful moment where there's this big conflict on stage, and you initially were very, like, bendy and, like, almost pleading, like, please stop fighting. And all I had to say was just, like, you have authority, be confident and stand up straight, and immediately, and it just carries really so much power.
That changing your posture really does, because I think I did that, too, in those moments where, like, I'm not necessarily like I have terrible posture the whole time, but like,
okay, this intrigues me.
I'm relaxed because he's fully human. But like, I don't know. I was just like he's just there, and he's just not anything like. In a way, he's really special because he's Jesus, but I always found it interesting.
Very humble too.
Normal. I always found it very interesting the way people like sometimes forget, and like this is the thing I always try and remember about the life of Jesus is he, like it specifically says in the Bible that he didn't stand out.
Right.
Like the thing that stood out about him was not how he looked. He didn't stick out like a sore thumb. He looked like I had this joke that I made with somebody. I was like, Jesus was a 5 at best.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
he was just your average looking guy.
Yep.
And like went so long unnoticed by like there's that huge chunk where there's nothing about Jesus because he didn't do it. He just like lived life as a Hebrew
For
man.
most of his life.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden, the things he does and the heart that he had for people, that's how he stuck out.
Yeah.
So, like, that was, like, a whole thing of, like, I didn't necessarily, like, have an amazing posture and, like, try to look, like, I was just, like, hanging there with my guys. And then, you know, in the moments that I needed to be firm and strong, or, like, when I'm revealing myself to the trial, like when the priests are asking, "Are you the Son of Man?" and I, Son of God, and yes, I am. Like in those moments, like I'd straighten up as much as I could, even though I'd just been beaten. Like I'm like exhausted and hunched over, and then like I take that moment to regain my strength to say, "Yes, I am the Son of God."
I always had. Yeah. I usually have a default posture for a character that is like my fallback. It's a little bit of Chekhov in there. Except instead of a gesture, it's like a posture type thing.
Yeah.
I always had my hands on my hips because I had this vibe, not in like a sassy way. My Jesus was sassy.
Southern sassy.
Southern
he
sassy
was a Southern
Jesus.
Belle.
Yeah.
Well, I do declare
that I am the Son of God. But I had like this image of like a worker in my brain, like the guy that you see that's always like ready to jump in and get his hands dirty. Like if there's an issue, he's like, "Oh, I can fix that," and like they're always at the go.
You always have a shovel with you.
Yeah,
just like...
I'm ready to dig a hole anytime for you.
A hole is not the solution to everything.
But there was like a strength in that, but like a common strength too, where it was like you don't want it to be. He was a king, but he was, like you said, gentle and lowly. And anytime he saw a need, he jumped in. Oh, I hit the thing again.
I think that portrayed well when you did it from my memory.
Yeah. I didn't see it, but I'm sure it did.
It is good.
I have pictures. I have a really crappy recording of 2/3 of it.
I'm really bummed I didn't see it, but I don't remember what I was doing. But it's funny that you brought up that you were like, it was during Mary Poppins.
It was. I literally went from that, and 2 weeks later was Mary Poppins.
Were you in Mary Poppins?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Who were you?
You were a plant.
Yeah. Bush.
Yeah. That was before we knew each other.
Kind of.
Really.
Like, yeah, we were getting
I didn't because I was a lead. Which is horrible for an
introvert.
And I was
a bush.
Not even one of the president's bushes.
No, I was a bush.
Sure, you were.
I remember seeing you, and I'd be like, I think that's Logan's younger brother. Oh, look, he's a bush.
Yeah, that's when I was still Logan's younger brother.
Yeah.
Gross. Can we just bleep his name?
It's the second bleep I have in the podcast is saying your brother's name.
Who's the first?
Love it. Sophia Medawar accidentally quoted somebody using the F-bomb.
Oh,
and then
okay.
felt really bad about
this episode.
Oh, in this episode? Don't you remember when you dropped the F-bomb, Nate?
I didn't think you noticed, though.
It was so quick.
I'm going to keep going. It's a really long episode, but I'm going to go. What were ways that your relationship with God or your own spiritual life was impacted by playing Jesus or is being impacted?
How are you impacted by my performance?
By your performance?
Yeah.
I mean,
although that's a good question too.
I did want to kind of make a comment about like all this stuff that we're talking about. I was like, I love how like right now in this moment while you're like going through this journey, I'm going through a separate journey of having to flip everything I did.
Yeah,
I know.
We could talk about
like,
that.
I have to like any of the moments where you get to enjoy it. Like I didn't think it was going to be that hard.
Uh-huh.
And for most of it, I do pretty fine. But there have been some moments where I'm like, I can't find that funny.
Okay, my favorite. Oh, I don't want to spoil this joke, but there is one joke that's my favorite joke that I've crafted in the entire show,
we'll
and it broke you, and I was like, yes.
Yeah.
But so for people who don't know, Jordan is playing a random ensemble member who also happens
to be
his only lines are tempting Jesus. Legally, he's only an ensemble member.
Put those together,
yes.
And what do you get?
So that's been a very interesting character switch for you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I mean, in some ways it's easy because like I just had to focus on like with Jesus, I was just focusing on anything that's good and holy and pure.
Yeah.
And then for ensemble number 9, I just had to do the opposite of that. Because there's just a profound lesson that I got taught one time about like, because there are people who will be like, I should like to like fight off the devil. I should study the devil and like know how to like defend against that. And one guy was like, don't do that because you're gonna get into things that is gonna mess with you and hurt you. And I'm glad I heard that, because then I got this role and I was like, okay, I know exactly how to attack this. Yep. And his whole thing was like, study God, and then if you want to know about the devil, study God, and it's just the opposite. Literally 180 is literally everything's opposite. Yep. God is love and he's pure and he's just. The devil is not pure and not lovely and not just, and just flip everything on its head. So like just trying to have to like portray that. There's still like instincts that are opposite. Like with Jesus, like the opposite instinct is there are times where I'm like, oh, you're so stupid, but then they're like, oh no, I'm Jesus, I love you. But then there's times where I'm like I want to be I am a decent human being, hopefully. God willing.
I think so.
But then in the show, it's just like, I just have to be the worst. Yeah. I can't enjoy any good thing. Like the only times I find enjoyment is somebody in pain or in suffering.
Which is rough because everybody else has some moments of enjoyment at least. Even our ensemble get to share in some of the joy that abounds in the show.
They're just humans. They're people. And I'm like a being of just darkness.
Which is so interesting putting that in Godspell, because I think it's just... Don't sing it. No, you have to buy tickets to hear it. But it is. I was very intrigued when we were going to put you in, because I hadn't thought about just the radical change it would be to the show to put you in. In my brain, it was more just like, yeah, we're going to put together some of the show, and then the show will be incomplete, and then we'll get Jordan in, and then it will be complete. But what actually happened is we built this really fun, joyful show. And then we threw you in, and it's really different.
I didn't think it was going to be a problem until because I didn't know the show, and I was like, yeah, okay, we can put in an ensemble number 9 presence, and
that classic biblical character,
classic biblical character, ensemble number 9, but then I get into the rehearsals, and I hadn't really been doing much, but I started like seeing what you guys were doing, and I was like, oh, this is just like a fun. Like I kind of thought it might be a little weird because I knew certain things about the shows. It's usually like a troupe of actors, or like we're in a fun like newer setting, and we're and then I'm like hearing the songs, and it's all these parables, and they're like doing fun, corny things, trying not to give away things, but like they're like, if you know Godspell, like they're doing all these fun like zany character kind of things, and Jesus is just having a lot of fun with his disciples, which is so cool to see. I'm like, oh yeah, they're just all having fun and enjoying each other's company. And then there's just this guy. I feel like I'm that dude at a party that you don't want around. But like it's just so interesting, especially with Act 1, because it's all just fun and joy and games, and there's some heavy moments, but like we come back to it, and it's just there's just this serious presence that doesn't
fully
fit.
Let up. Yeah.
Which I think works so well in its own way. It doesn't sit right.
And that's the world.
And that's the whole thing.
Yeah, that's cool.
And I think it's just so interesting. And I appreciate that even inputting ensemble number 9 into the show, you didn't like put him through the lens of Godspell. Like it kind of feels like he's from a different show.
Yes. Yeah.
You're like you definitely could have still put this character in there, but like hammed him up and been like, he's ensemble number 9. But you we didn't. We're like, oh, this is ensemble number 9.
You're saying that's an appropriate reaction.
I'm trying to think of
then ensemble member number 9.
Like I feel like in some ways, don't take this offense to any of this, but I feel like Godspell, like the rest of the cast is like living in like, we're doing SpongeBob the musical.
Yeah.
And I'm over here like like friggin'. The only one I can think is like Sweeney Todd, but that's even a comedy. So like, but like Here I Come being like
King Lear.
Yeah, King Lear. Yeah. That's a good. That's better. Yeah. It's like a Shakespeare. Like it's coming in. It's like oh, we're over here. We're doing and I'm like, is this a dagger which I see before me? Right. Like, you know.
But see, that's so great because there's these moments in the show that are like that.
Yeah.
And that should be like that, even if you're doing it from a secular perspective and not worrying about the resurrection or anything. Act 2 is even so much more like dour than Act 1, even removing a spiritual aspect from it. So then having this kind of constant of the darkness that things dip in and out into, I think, ties it all together really well and gives the whole thing a tension that I really wanted.
Yeah.
So
we got really
so off topic. That's fine.
But that was that was, we can count that as a commercial break for Godspell.
That was our commercial. I don't have to record an ad now. And now to find out more, buy tickets at www. At the website you're on right now.
Yeah.
Probably. Unless it's YouTube, you can't buy tickets.
Or the podcast app.
Yeah.
What was
the actual question we were supposed to answer?
The spiritual impact.
Yeah, what's been the spiritual impact for you of playing Jesus?
Do you want to go first?
Oh, we've not got there at all yet?
Oh.
No, we haven't. We completely derailed into talking about
I don't remember how we got, like, I'll probably listen to this episode and go, what?
I don't know. We're at an hour and a half. And I love it. This is going to be the longest episode I've ever done. I could do 2 episodes. That would be great. I don't have to. More content for me? Yeah.
Come back for part 2.
The break will have been half an hour ago.
Anyway. So, yeah.
Will they return in the sequel? We're in the sequel right now, so yes.
Yeah. We just had that idea halfway through the second part. Anyway.
Meta.
I can go, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you can think about it.
I was going to go, but you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. If you got something?
No, if you got something.
Okay, so I'm hoping that spiritual impact will just keep on revving up for me with this since we're just still in it. But even just like walking through the scenes and reading from the book, I found that there's a difference from, reading the Bible and you're usually reading quietly and reading Jesus's words. And for me, I've always struggled with the Bible is written very kind of straightforward, and there's not a whole lot of like modern literature, just the putting in of their heart was going like this during this moment and this. There's some of that, but not as much, and it can be easy, at least for me, to read Jesus as rather severe. But when you have to read it out loud and you're thinking about this is the most loving person there is, it just changes the way the lines come out of your mouth. And it's like, oh, that is not how I instinctively would read these lines if I'm just reading the Bible by myself. But if this is a person who's saying this, who is so loving and so just and real, then he's maybe he was saying this a little different than I thought. And so that's a helpful thing to get to experience that. And I'm just we're coming into off book next week, and just the deeper we get into it, the more things will become
that's when things
natural
really,
and less worrying about blocking and stuff. And so
are you saying you want to be less concerned about the Word of God, Nate?
That's not what I'm saying.
Yikes.
I'm saying
that sounds like a heresy reason for me to kick him out right before we open and me to step in.
For all shows, like I kind of get to know the character better towards the end.
Absolutely.
Of it.
I often annoy directors because as soon as I possibly think I can try and get off book, I try.
Oh, okay.
And everybody else still has a script in their hand. They're like, John, why we have... and then, usually it's just a little bit too early. They're like, John, get your script back. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. But I'm wanting like the things that Jesus is doing I want to apply them to this is how Jesus feels about you, Nate. And this is how he is, and so this is how maybe you should treat people and think about people. And so I'm just wanting more of that.
Yeah, for sure. Jordan.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very similar to that of how it affected me was just, like I said, focusing on compassion, just realizing the need for that in my life with others, and also like accepting compassion from others.
Yeah.
And just seeing the world very differently, and kind of just seeing people differently as like loved by Jesus, so much more. Like I love people the way that we're supposed to, but like that just became so much more real.
Yeah.
I think the other aspect that really grew was just a desire to know Jesus even more and deeper, because I feel like we can fall into that trap of like, I think I know Jesus pretty well. Like, I've read the Bible enough. I get it. But then just, like you were saying, like, those words just become so more real. And, like, especially with a show where it's, like, it's just straight up scripture. But, yeah, just being able to, just like that, just, like, sitting in scripture like that was just so powerful and eye-opening in that area. And then I think the last thing that I thought of was, I think it probably was the start, or still very early on in this journey. It's still a journey I'm not necessarily struggling with now, but it's something that the Lord is still teaching me and still working on me in, is just trusting His timing and His plan and His, like, just surrendering things of Him. Because with the show, like, playing Jesus, like, I had my reservations, but I went in and I did the work, and I was being a good actor, being a smart actor, and doing what I felt like I needed to do. And then we get to the time where we're opening, we're needing to do shows. And I don't know if you guys have felt this way with playing Jesus, but I feel like when you're playing Jesus, it's much worse than any other character, because sometimes you'll feel this with other characters, but I feel like with Jesus it's even more where you're like, no, I'm not ready, like I haven't gotten there yet, like I haven't gotten to where I need to be. And I definitely felt that, of like, I was like, I know all the words, I know the intentions I'm supposed to be playing, I know how this is supposed to go, but I'm like, I just don't feel like I'm doing enough.
I had that a lot in, like, reverse, because afterwards I did Mary Poppins, and I felt like, even just at the end of getting past Mary Poppins, I was like, I feel like I'm, like, even already a much better actor than I was in Cotton Patch. Yeah. I'm like, already.
That's
it's already not my best work.
That's I think one of the hard things as an actor is I feel like every show you're just like, oh man, if I had known this last show, it would have been so much better. Yeah. So that's a downfall, but just one of the beautiful things was, like, sadly it didn't start right away for performances for this, but I finally came to this realization of, like, I don't need it to be perfect, because I can't be perfect. What I can do is go out there and do my best, do it for the Lord. And I kind of had this prayer that I would pray before each show to kind of calm my nerves about playing Jesus. And it was just like, just praying for the Lord to fill me with His Spirit, and working on, like, just, like, I'd be like, I give this performance to you, whatever happens, whatever line flubs, whatever scratchy notes, whatever wrong notes happen, I just want to be a reflection of you. I know I can't be a copy or a clone, but I just want to be a reflective surface to just reflect you to the audience. And use whatever happens tonight to speak to people, to touch hearts, to reach the people in the audience. And that helped a lot, because even some of most often my worst nights, performance aspect, would be the nights where people were just so touched, and, like, and
that's just like,
because and even some of the nights that, like, I would black out, like, like I'd black out until I made a wrong note or said something kind of funny, and then that pulled me out of it, and I was like, oh no, and then I was just like, Lord, use it. And then, I'd get done, and just seeing people that sometimes it was the thing of like, oh, I didn't even notice, or sometimes they would just see in that there's the real humanness, and that would just make Jesus more human to people.
Jesus wasn't a perfect actor either. This is great.
He flubbed his parables all the time.
I think his parables were perfect. I think his timing was probably
the best
amazing.
comedic timing ever.
It's probably like
he's the creator.
And
of
you know what happened?
Yeah.
You know what happened to the prodigal son? He wanted to eat what the pigs ate. Whoa! Perfect timing.
That is something that was, I think, really profound for me, though, and has been profound. All of us were really sick. So, like, the story that I told was, like, our cast was clearly weak and struggling throughout the show. But then you're thinking about portraying Jesus, and as we've all said, you can't do that perfect. Yeah. So I think it's a really crisp, hard something of... What's the word I'm trying to think of? I don't know. It's a crisp, hard cracker that I don't know. It's the body of Christ. It's more than a cracker, Nick.
It's more than
the
a
real
cracker.
It really hits you with the reality of, in my weakness, you are strong.
Yeah.
We cannot.
Yeah.
We never can do what he wants to accomplish through the presence of his son, or like the words of his son ourselves. But if we just open our hands and trust him in our weakness and accept, I will not do what I want or need to do, but in God's grace he can get me there.
I feel like this kind of thing, it makes me think of your last podcast episode, which you've all heard before. I don't need to recap it, but
unless you haven't.
Unless you have.
It only has like 8 views thus far. Usually the ones that are just me don't do as well, so they may not.
You should listen to it, guys, because it was really helpful to me. One of the things John talked about was doing art with God, and I think that the role of playing Jesus is just like, okay, you really need to kind of be doing it with God, and so it forces you into that place, which is beautiful, like you've talked about, Jordan, and yeah, just like maybe we should have this kind of be for other things we do too. That if anything good happens, it was God in that too, even if you're not playing Jesus, and then bring it out further, even if you're not acting in a show, but you're just trying to go through life. Nothing that we can do will work on our own. And if it works out, it's because God was in that, and he wants to be in all of the moments of life with us. Because essentially we're all always kind of playing Jesus as like little Christs. Yeah. And we're not going to do it perfectly, but that doesn't mean he's going to leave us or be disappointed or mad at us because we're not doing it perfectly. We just need to do it with him the best we
I just realized I don't think it still is, but I thought it was funny you said Little Christ, because that used to be in my Instagram bio was Lil Christ.
Lil Christ. Like L-I-L?
Like L-I-L.
Love it.
Nice.
It was like Lil Christ.
Love it.
And then I made my thing public for acting, and I was like, that's a little unprofessional. Follower of Jesus Christ. That's better. We'll do that.
There you go.
But yeah. No, what you were saying, like, as we've all been saying about how much we need the Spirit to portray Jesus correctly. Yeah. It'd be really interesting to hear from non-believers who've portrayed Jesus. Like how they...
Let me call Willem Dafoe. He's my other famous actor on speed dial.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe is a 5 at best.
Of all the men that have portrayed Jesus, Willem Dafoe maybe best captures the physical look of Jesus.
Though I do love looking at Willem Dafoe. He's just so interesting.
And his face is so engaged.
It's so
not a 5. So he did stand out, so he would play good Jesus.
That is interesting.
Come back next week when we decide who would play good Jesus.
We're going to give you the perfect Jesus casting right here and right now. Because we've clearly stated several times that it's not the three of us.
Right.
That does interest me a lot. There's a lot of times I'm watching a show, either about Jesus. Oh man, okay. So when can I say a sentence? Probably not.
Go for it.
You have a podcast, so I sure hope so.
One of the times, I think it was the third time I saw Godspell, was at a high school, and somebody who went to my church was the musical director, or not the music, was the theater director there. And it was a huge cast. It was like a 30, 40 something cast.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was huge. They had a giant ensemble. That was what made me think, we could do something with the background characters in this.
Yeah.
But they put the resurrection back in, and I knew the heart of the director, and it overflowed the spirit of the gospel, even in this weird, crazy, wacky. It almost felt like Seussical in its like colors and design.
Oh, okay.
Like not necessarily in the makeup, but just in it. I was like, I feel like I'm in like a Dr. Seuss world. It was crazy.
Now I'm just picturing it, and it's interesting.
But
one fish, two fish, thousands of fish.
I was going more along the lines of like the opening number instead of Seuss. I was like, God, Godspell. Like I was like, oh, okay, that's the things you believe. All the things you believe. If you're willing to try.
Think of man rising from the dead. Think of. It's too many syllables.
Anyway,
beautiful city, city. City of man. But I was watching it, and I was like, the gospel is overflowing. Does the kid who's playing Jesus realize that? And I don't know if... And I went up, and I was like...
Did you interrogate him?
I didn't interrogate him.
You realize, son?
I pinned him against the wall. I was like...
Boy, do you understand
the Harrison Ford point.
You a Christian?
But I did go up to him afterwards and say, I've played that role. I know how profound and important it is, and it means a lot to me. Jesus means a lot to me, and you did very good. And he just kind of gave me like a stock, like, thank you, I've done a show type answer. I was like, that's a little sad. But I was like, and I frequently wonder that when people do shows that are so baked in the Christian faith.
Yeah.
There's several that I've seen where I'm like, do you understand the profound, eternal, divine message that's coming through this? And if you don't, what are you experiencing right now?
Yeah.
And it often breaks my heart because I think sometimes people are like, this is a great show. And it means, love, and which is a good thing, or something else. But there's just such a deeper, richer truth that's waiting for people to find.
Yeah.
It's interesting when biblical stories get turned into shows that are secular.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're like, yeah, there's truth in that, but also like there's just a shoot, and this may just be because of like all my experiences with Sight and Sound shows, which are like Bible stories written by Christians that are like, there's specific lessons that they're honing in on and teaching, as opposed to like Jesus Christ Superstar or Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat,
or
Godspell.
Yeah.
But there's things in those.
My show that's avoiding the truth. No.
But yeah, like at least with like Godspell, there's like a clear like, and they make it clear that like this is a show about community. That's what we're trying to like hone in on.
Right.
But then like, I mean, maybe there is, but I don't know of one in Jesus Christ Superstar other than them being like, let's sing super high notes and
make Judas empathetic.
Make people feel bad for Judas, but
which is valid. Judas is sad.
But like, I guess I'm zeroing in on something that's not even Jesus. So you may not want to include this in a Jesus podcast, but like with Joseph, I was just thinking about it of like when people do Joseph, like, yeah, you get the story of Joseph, but like you can't really hone in on any like real lessons there. It's just like, here's the story, but like nobody really touches on the lessons that are learned, how Joseph is like pointing to Jesus the whole time.
Don't you realize the lesson is any dream will do? What does that even mean? It's kind of sad.
It's a beautiful song, but also like
any dream will do. Yours is whatever.
Just pick a dream. That nightmare, grab it and go. Did we just say the same thing? We're starting to get in sync as Jesus actors. Now I've seen Joseph 3 times, and 2 times it was done by believers.
Yeah.
And when I saw those ones, I was like, all right, cool. I didn't hate it. I had fun with it.
I mean, I've seen Joseph. Well, I've seen Joseph once. I've done lights for Joseph once.
Right.
And so that means I've seen it thousands of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one was by a believer and one wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
One was more show-stopping, and I kind of enjoyed it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And then one, I was like, oh, good. You found, like, some message in this. Like, you found a way to use this.
Yep.
Which is great. And that's great as believers, is, like, finding a way.
Mm-hmm.
And even in the show-stopping non-Christian one, like, there is still truth in that.
Right. Absolutely.
Which is why I'm not necessarily totally against the people writing Bible musicals. I just go watch them and I'm like, you kind of missed it though. Like
Isn't that
you didn't get it.
interesting? Because it's like the wisdom of God is foolishness to man, and the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of man, and no man can come unto God unless the Spirit draws him. And it's just like, that seems like, but it's right there in the book, in the Bible. You can just read what it's about, and yet they still just can't.
Although sometimes, like
Oh,
Prince
that's
of
a fun
Egypt
story.
is an example of some time where it like nails that on the head.
Yeah. But
Like-
there's still even some things in that where you're like, okay, yeah, you didn't completely get it, or you're trying to stray away from that stuff. But then what's great is like in stories that are not Bible stories, I've noticed it more. Like once I realized it, I like now look for it in secular musicals of just because the Bible is the greatest story ever told, and like Jesus has his hand in everything, and like, I mean, you can always go to the default like it's about redemption, and that's a biblical theme.
Yeah.
But there are some shows where you're just like like now that I've like opened up my eyes to it, I'm like, they didn't even know it, and this is a biblical tale.
Yep.
Like, yeah, it's about man eating plants, but like there's truth in this, like, and that's just the amazing thing of like still being able to see God using things that we would be like, oh, he can't use that, and he's like, let me prove you wrong.
Right.
Yeah. Continue to be bigger than what you can imagine.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I guess we should wrap it up because we're nearing 2 hours. So longest episode. Well, longest 2 episodes, I guess, but we were joking before the podcast started.
The normalist 2 episodes.
What an average length
wait.
for 2 episodes.
Oh, shoot, that means you're still ahead.
But as far as like, so what we were talking about before the podcast
all of
started.
my things from like one of the episodes so you can still catch up.
We'll just split it into 2. No, then he's still ahead. Wait, is he? No, yeah, he is. We were joking before the episode that Nate has now been my most frequent recurring guest. Because I wasn't expecting to cast him as Jesus, and then I did, and it's been an amazing choice.
He wasn't
thinking about it at all. He knew I was auditioning.
Nate walks in and he's just like, oh, you sure you want to do this?
A sheep that we're going to be in the show. You might be able to be
Ensemble
a thin
number
sheep.
9.
Okay.
Actually,
No, that's
Hang on.
literally true.
Literally, that's true.
really?
Yes. Because,
So there was competition. I was like, I feel like I'm the only one.
well,
auditioning
for
this.
years, I've wanted to do this, and one of the people that I talked to about this a lot was Nate. And I told him about my entire concept with that, and he was like, that's a pretty cool concept. And I was like, I feel like you would do really good at that. So in the back of my head...
But it'd be cool to play Jesus. I know he wants me to be ensemble member number 9. That'd be cool too.
So we'll just
but
swap roles.
We
every
could
night.
do that
I don't know the show at all, but we'll just
every
swap.
night. That'd be like that Frankenstein
Yeah.
thing that
or like Waiting
Benedict
for Godot.
Yeah.
Was that right?
Yeah, they've done that before.
Uh-huh.
I don't know Godspell at all. I'll just wing it.
You have to stop.
It's just scripture,
basically
you
improv.
know it.
Scripture and improv.
Sweet. I'm great at both of them.
Why does I say? Oh, so the joke that I'm explaining to our audience is taking 5 minutes is that Nate's my most recurring guest now, and then Jordan was really sad that Nate is ahead of him. So, but now Jordan, you do have more like time on the podcast than anybody else other than me and Nate. So
That's something.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Not enough. I just gotta figure
I think
out
maybe that
another
like
topic to talk to.
that
Tom
ensemble
about.
member number 9-ish greed is starting.
What
to...
are you talking about? How dare you?
Thank you guys for coming on the podcast again. It's been really great
Oh, it's
chatting
been
with you
awesome.
guys.
Thanks for having us.